And what do you think about the mortgage markets, the Ginnie Mae residential mortgage backed securities in particular? They're starting to trade at 70 to 80 cents on the dollar. And what happened was the convexity flipped from negative to positive because the prepayment options are basically out of the money or very deep out of the money. And you still have the real option to put the bonds back to the government in the event of a credit default. So a credit default when they're trading at 70 to 80 cents on the dollar would actually increase the yield of a collateral pool filled with these bonds. And so I wanted to get your thoughts on some of the distortions that we're seeing in the mortgage market. And when do you think some of the usual buyers like banks and insurance companies are going to start buying in a big way back into these markets? There was a lot less of that in 2022. What do you see going forward?
So a lot of that specific stuff, I couldn't speak to every bit of it, but I can definitely tell you that there's a lot of things about our current housing market that make very little sense. And especially since people have now more embraced hybrid and remote work. There starts to be very little reason for somebody who could potentially work remote. Even my job, which is working at NASA as an EVA safety engineer, even my job I can do almost fully remote. You can even now support mission control fully remote, even including talking on a headset and everything. We have become so quick to be able to move to fully remote, and that has become such a viable option for so many people. It starts to make me, now it's starting to be a very big sell of, do I really want to live downtown near my office and have to pay 3 to 4 times as much for housing in a place with high crime that's crowded and loud? And it starts to not make much sense. It seems to not be a good option. And I think more and more people are going to realize, you know what, I don't need to do this for my job. Why don't I just go live out in the sticks? And I have an internet connection, so I can still work. And the sticks are very cheap to live in. And I think that is going to be a trend. And also what that'll also do is, and we also have a lot of problems with housing as well, of these regulations, and that's not really a problem in Texas, but things like certain regulations and zoning laws that make it impossible, make it an intentional artificial housing shortage, because there's so many people with a lot of stake in real estate that own the property. Well, they don't want their property value to go down when somebody tears down all these little old houses and makes bigger ones, or builds apartments or something where you can house more people. Well, that's going to lower the the value of your house, because now you don't have to pay 3 to 4 times what it's really worth just to live in that area. And this is obviously a big problem in places like California and the West Coast. I also think another thing to consider is inflation. A lot of these mortgages, if inflation is really bad, but you go and if I agree with the bank, we're going to have I'm going to take a mortgage for $300,000 and we have a bunch of really crazy inflation. Well, the bank is losing out if the inflation rate is higher than my interest rate. Correct? I mean, because the amount we've already settled on an amount, you can't just hike that amount. And because of that, if that might be them trying to assume that might be them trying to make a prediction that inflation is kind of here to stay, and that we're going to have more inflation issues. That'd be the easiest answer to why they would do that. And I just do think that, and also I think overall, the other thing is less and less people that are younger can even get mortgages. So it's going to be something where it's becoming smaller and smaller market.